Hello, everyone. I hope you all have had a good week and you're learning how to implement those healthy lifestyles with those low glycemic foods. And I hope you've all called the clinic to set up an appointment with me and Erin. If you are having trouble with the times that we sent out, please send us an email and we will try to figure out something that works for you as well as all of us. Okay, so if you have not sent me how much weight you lost, I need you to do that. And if you're not done with Reset, as soon as you're done with Reset, it would be helpful for you to send me that so that we are all on the same page and I have an understanding of how quickly you're going to be losing weight. We also want everybody to pick a phase, whether you're going to do phase 1, which remember is 2 shakes a day and 1 low glycemic meal along with your 2 healthy snacks, or if you're going to go to phase 2, which is basically the maintenance phase. These continued phases will help you to establish those healthy lifestyles and enable you to continue your health journey in a successful way. So tonight we will begin by addressing the topic of the art of balanced living and the 4 critical areas in your life that lead to a permanent success in healthy living and we're going to do that with beginning with nutrition. By taking these simple small steps that are consistent over time with progress being the focus and not perfection, you will begin to see the results and the health benefits that you are looking for. So don't allow yourself to get discouraged. Sometimes you'll feel like you're stuck, and if you give us a call, if you feel like you're stuck, then we can help you work through that because it is not unusual to get stuck. Especially people will hit plateaus and they don't know how to get over them. So please give us a call during that time so we can help you get through that. Okay, so the topics this week are implementing those good carbs and those good proteins. And this is closely related to the glycemic index and the glycemic load, which I'm going to explain. Make sure, I actually sent out last week your recommended food list and the glycemic index and load. So please make sure you have access to that because this list is what you're going to be eating 80% of your food from on the desirable list. This is going to enable you to continue your healthy weight loss for the next few weeks. Last week, our core principle related to your success in any program or endeavor that you take on. And we talked about your thoughts and unwavering, non-negotiable desires or commitments in order for you to fulfill your goals. We also talked about the fact that tests come and they will challenge your resolve. How bad do you want it? And what are you willing to do to make the changes to get what you want? Staying focused on your why is what is going to motivate you to this successful outcome. So if you have not written down your why, make sure you do that so that you have a real good understanding of where you're heading. So the second principle is a key component in reversing bad habits and maintaining a healthy lifestyle. So tonight we are going to talk about the foods that won't spike your blood sugar and the foods that will fuel your body with energy and help you to release fat. The issue that we're all facing is something like a juggling act. We do what we think to be right because after all, we are getting a lot of mixed messages regarding food from many different sources today. We eat what we think are nutritious foods, but we find ourselves dealing with lack of peaked energy and excitement because this just might be the key to help accomplish some of my health goals, followed by the valleys of discouragement that cause us to throw our hands up in the air and scream, what's the worth? So many times we can't we feel like we can't do something, or we say to ourselves, these programs are all the same, I can't do this. But the reality of health for the 21st century is that we have been in a steady decline for many, many years. And the epidemics of obesity, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes are on the rise. Not to mention, they reduce our energy, and we have constant food cravings that we can't seem to get rid of no matter what we try. The problem really isn't that people don't want to eat well and be well. The problem isn't that they doubt the wisdom of a healthy diet. The problem is that a lot of folks just don't really know what a healthy diet looks like anymore because the rules keep changing. So tonight, we're going to explain a concept called the glycemic index that will hopefully take all the confusion away. Last week, we started to talk about how foods we eat affect our health, how the high glycemic foods break down into sugar very quickly and release energy. They also cause you to eat more. This wheel explains what happens when you eat a high glycemic diet. They spike your blood sugar and insulin levels rise. If you remember the chart from last week where there was a lot of spiking and crashing, that leads to blood sugar that will quickly fall, causing your body to store fat. As your blood sugar falls, your counter-regulatory hormones like cortisol, that's a stress hormone, adrenaline, that's your fight-flight hormone, growth hormones, they make you, the growth hormone makes you to grow tall and wide. And then there's a hormone called glucagon. These are all released. The primary purpose of these hormones releasing when you've spiked and crashed your blood sugar is to get your blood sugar back up to the acceptable levels. If your body didn't release these hormones, you'd pass out. And even though the blood sugar returns to normal, the body is left with an uncontrollable hunger, and many associate this with a lack of willpower. However, this is a result of a metabolic response that has nothing to do with willpower. It takes place in your system, and all your cells are screaming, "Give me some food." This is not a lack of self-discipline, and I really need people to understand that. You have spiked your blood sugar, and it is not a fact of self-discipline. You have developed a chemical response that has taken place in your cells, and there's nothing you can do about it. So hopefully we're in the beginning to understand that not all calories are created equal. And this study reinforces the idea of making simple, small steps that are consistent over time that can result in two totally different outcomes. So here are some tips to help you succeed for the long haul. And this is a study done out of the New England Journal of Medicine, so I want to help you understand this. We have here nuts on the left and fries on the right. Both carry fats and many calories. Yes, yet most people would probably say that the French fries would be healthier because it is a vegetable with a low fat content. But let's compare. So we have the nuts here. The nuts take a longer to chew, to break down the enzymes, and to get the health benefit. They contain fat and fiber that needs more time to digest, so you want to chew really well and taste the flavors before swallowing. And it's a protein with good fats that help to release the hormone glucagon, which your fat releasing hormone, that's glucagon. You will stay fuller longer, so you will eat less over the long haul. On the right side, we have our fries, and these have been cooked in starch that breaks down very quickly, causing a quick rise in your blood sugar. The body releases an insulin, cortisol, and adrenaline in order to get things under control, but all that does is lead to hunger pangs and out of control eating. So you're going to eat more. And this is a metabolic response that kicks in, and guess what? You gain more weight than if you ate the nuts. If you see on the left side, if you ate the nuts as your snack, or usually that's kind of what it is, or the food option, you're going to lose almost 0.6 of a pound. But if you eat the French fries, you are going to gain 3 1/3 pounds. So what is the glycemic index and how do we use it? If you have the glycemic index in the paper paper available to you, you might want to pull it so that you can look at it, because I'm going to refer to it somewhat. I'm going to pull all these up here. Okay, so the first here is the glycemic index, and you can see at the top of the page, it's a numerical standard that determines how high your blood sugar rises and how long it remains high after you've eaten a certain meal. Each food has a glycemic index value which is associated with your particular system. For example, people who eat high glycemic foods several times a day over many years develop a sensitivity that ultimately leads to diabetes and other health issues. But in addition to the glycemic index, there is something called the glycemic load, which combines the effect of the carb, which is your glycemic index, to the amount consumed. So you have to look at portion size and you have to look at how quickly your blood system or your metabolic system returns to normal. That's what they're looking at. It determines the metabolic spasms that remain elevated, causing those arteries to spasm. And that's really causing damage to your arteries. So foods high on the glycemic index are 70 or above, and 20 on the glycemic load. So if you have a high glycemic food, it's going to be 70 or above on the glycemic index and 20 or above on the glycemic load. Processed, these foods are very processed or instant foods. They have a lack of fiber, vitamins, and minerals. They digest extremely quickly. And the more you eat of these high glycemic foods, the longer they stay in the system. Moderate foods, however, range between 56 and 69, and the glycemic load level is between 11 and 19. Your low glycemic foods are going to be 55 on the glycemic index or lower, and below 10 on the glycemic load level. They generally are one ingredient whole foods, like a fruit or a vegetable. They have lots of fiber, and quality vitamins and minerals are still intact. They digest extremely slowly, and they produce a gradual rise in the blood sugar and insulin that makes your system happy. And if you remember to last week, you remember that rolling band of safety on that one slide we had. This is a index example that we're going to refer to. So I want you to look at the dates. The dates are at the top up here, if you can see that. Dates on the glycemic index are 103. And that's for 2 ounces, so that's your serving size right here. And the carbs are 60. I'm sorry, that's not right. The carbs are 40, and the glycemic load level, which is how fast it goes through your system, is 42. To most people, they would say, well, these 40 calories or these 40 carbs here are not that bad for 2 ounces, but it is bad. And that's only half the story. According to the index and the load, this would be a very high GI glycemic index food because it's going to spike your blood sugar and your system will spasm, mainly because we have the index right here is 103 and your load level is 42, which are very high. So if you would go down to let's see here, each of the foods in this value, which is associated with your particular system, for example, people who eat high glycemic foods several times a day over many years develop a sensitivity that ultimately leads to diabetes and other health issues. But in addition to the glycemic index and the load, which combines the effect of the carb, which is your glycemic index, to the amount, this is why your serving size is so important. The load determines how much time the effect remains high in your system. And that's really key. We have to remember that. We have to keep that in consideration. All right, so according to the index and the load, this would be a very high glycemic food up here. On the other hand, let's look at the spaghetti. Right here we have in the middle of the page. If you're looking at an index and saw this 44 for 1 cup, you would consider that to be low glycemic. Most people do. They think this is a healthy option. And then you go over here and you look at the glycemic load and it's actually a 21, which is a very high on the glycemic index, which means it is going to process through your system extremely quickly and spike your blood sugar. Ideally, or when in question on what to eat, whether to eat according to the index or the load, you want to eat according to the glycemic load level. So peanuts are here on the bottom, and they're low on the glycemic index and the load, so they are considered a low glycemic option. But however, with peanuts, you need to make sure on all of these things that you're sticking with the serving size. And we notice that serving size is not that much. It's only 1 ounce. So if you're sticking to 1 ounce for your peanuts, you're going to be fine. But if you're adding, you know, a cup of peanuts or even a half a cup of peanuts, you're going to want to be really, really careful. So make sure that you're paying attention to both the glycemic index levels and the glycemic load levels of the food. Sometimes when you look at glycemic indexes on there's many charts out there that have a glycemic index. And I want you to make sure that you not just pick a chart that's just glycemic index, because it's not 100% true. You want to find one that has the glycemic index and the load. And I will be sending out an email with that in it. I think I already did. Send an email out that had the index, another chart that had an index level and a load level in it. So you can check those out. Okay, so these foods are example of your lowest glycemic foods. They're low load foods and they're on the low glycemic chart. This list here is what you want to eat a plethora of. These foods are to be, you can choose to eat according to the Dirty Dozen, and that's another little thing I will send out to you, because it's very important for you to understand that not every fruit and vegetable needs to be organic. Sometimes people have a hard time figuring out which foods they should buy organic and which ones they don't need to buy organic. But there is something called the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. And you can eat the Clean 15 without having to get those on the organic list. But the Dirty Dozen, you would definitely want to eat all of those foods from the organic list. The other thing you want to be aware of is now that we have summer rolling in, we can eat local. Local foods often have more vitamins and minerals, and they're not sprayed with all of the pesticides that conventional foods are sprayed with. So it's okay if you want to eat some of the local foods in your grocery store, because they're going to have more vitamins and minerals than typical foods that are coming from the conventional food side. The other thing you don't want to do is you don't want to overcook your foods, because when you overcook them, they actually deplete some of the vitamins and minerals. So I like to just steam my vegetables. I put them in a steamer and just get them a little bit soft so that they're still on the crunchy side. You want to eat 80% of your fruits and vegetables as close to nature as possible. Sometimes I get a question about canned vegetables or canned fruits, and I would say I would limit this, because canned fruits and vegetables pretty much have the least amount of nutrition as far as vitamins and minerals go. They have been cooked to death, and they've gone through several processes that have taken a lot of the nutrients out. But frozen foods are a different story. If you say you want to eat something that's not quite in season, or you're making a dish that requires something that's not quite in season, I would go for the frozen fruits, because they're not they're blanched, but they're not cooked to death before they're frozen. So that would be the next best thing. Then steam, and then raw. So if you're thinking about it in terms of how many vitamins and minerals you're going to get out of your foods, the foods that are going to have the highest vitamins and minerals are going to be raw, then steamed, then you're frozen, and then you're canned. Okay, so when it comes to quality proteins, we encourage you to buy your meats from farms that treat their animals humanely and feed them with natural food sources without fillers and antibiotics. And this is a really important thing today. Cows should be grass-fed. Their constitution was never meant to be fed grains from corn, which is what many are fed today. Cows are typically not grazing, or they're not allowed to graze, but they stay in their stalls all day so that they will fatten up quickly. The problem with this is that it causes them to get sick and stressed, and the meat doesn't have the protein content of what it even had 30 years ago. So it's much better if you can find grass-fed beef from, you can get it at Whole Foods in the grocery store. Trader Joe's carries some grass-fed, and some of the other local stores are now carrying, I know Kroger and some of those stores now also carry some grass-fed products. So if you can do that, I would highly encourage you to do that. When you eat beef that is not grass-fed or organic, it's a moderate glycemic beef. It's not even that good for you, because it's really turned over to more of a grain corn mixture type of a beef. So it doesn't have as much protein as a grass-fed beef. If you are questioning this concept, I would love you to check out a documentary called King Corn on YouTube. It will really wake you up on what they actually do to the animals related to feeding and all of that. The same issue goes for chickens. Chickens do eat grains, but you want to make sure that they are all natural organic grains. Chicken Grain for chickens is kind of their normal thing. They actually eat the bugs and stuff out of grass as well. I actually still stick with organic chickens because some of their grains can have high levels of arsenic in them. And so that arsenic can be traced back to their feed. So please buy free range or organic chicken as well. Fish need to be wild caught. Wild caught fish have less mercury than fish that are farm raised. And again, the issue is often the feed. So that was it for our first half of our program here. And we are going to go on to the next one, which is exercise. And we're going to go into the core principle related to exercise here. We already talked about the first two core principles being that your unwavering ideas or thoughts need to be non-negotiable, and you have to be committed to your outcome, because without it, you can't withstand the tests. The second principle we learned was to eat in such a way as to not spike your blood sugar. We talked extensively on eating low glycemic, and we'll be sending some websites out for you to look at some other food options in addition to your list that you are currently using, but I really need you to use that list for really the next month, and because that's going to stabilize your blood sugar the best with those foods. So the next principle that we have is releasing is on our exercise, and Dr. Kenneth Cooper is the father of modern exercise, and he coined the word aerobic exercise back in the 60s. His quotes related to the fact that it doesn't matter what you do as long as you do something, and hold to a moderate intensity exercise program that has some balance. Exercise gives quality of life and actually helps you to keep your metabolic markers or your blood tests in check. And Dr. Cooper no longer recommends excessive exercising as he did in the early days, because as the research has come available, he has realized that overtraining results in a variety of other health issues, especially as one ages. So if you are an adult athlete training for a marathon or triathlon, it's vitally important for you to be fueling your body well with good nutrition and quality supplementation. My husband was training for an Olympic distance triathlon back in his 40s, and this regimen lack of supplementation and healthier food choices. We ate pretty healthy, but as I learned this low glycemic lifestyle, we realized that there were some things that we needed to change. But this lifestyle, we realized, most likely played a role in his development of cancer, as I shared a little bit last week. Several of the doctors that we work with also said that that research shows that when you are exercising overabundantly without the right quality of micronutrients for your cells, it can also lead to cancer. So consider this information, because if you are that type of a person, you really want to make sure you're taking quality supplements and eating low glycemic foods. I've often heard clients that take my class. I'm actually also an aerobics instructor, and I've actually taught for 30 years. But one of the things that they will say at times is that it's hard to be consistent or even to stay motivated to come to class. And they laugh about how long it takes them to get out the door, and if they wait too long and they think about the exercise, sometimes they won't go. Now, I know there are some people that have that mentality, and then there are others that are totally like, I need to get out the door because if I don't go, I don't feel good. And I have those people in my class too that have arthritis and joint issues, and I teach a lot of water fitness, so they really swear by coming to a water aerobics class, because if they don't come, they don't feel good. And to be honest, there have been many days as an instructor myself that I would have chosen to stay home, except that I was the teacher, so I had to go. But even though most of us recognize that exercise is good for us, many choose not to do any activity at all. And it has been reported that only about a third of the population does any exercise, and that it varies significantly to the amount and intensity of the activity that is performed. The U.S. Surgeon General issued a statement back in the 80s declaring that modest exercise programs provided the following health benefits. They provided weight loss, lower blood pressure, stronger bones and decreased risk of osteoporosis, lower total cholesterol, decreased levels of the bad cholesterol. Exercise actually elevates your good cholesterol. It decreases the levels of your triglycerides, and that's the other fat in the blood. It increases your strength and coordination, which leads to decreased falls and injuries as we age. It enhances your immune system, and it overall increases the sense of well-being and improves insulin sensitivity, which we talked about just a few minutes ago. So as we continue this week, we're going to talk about improving our own sensitivity to insulin through exercise. And exercise is the biggest benefit in changing the metabolic markers related to the sensitivity that you have and to fat loss. The underlying problem of insulin resistance has to be consistency and regular exercise. It's key in turning these things around, and it is one of the factors in losing weight. Exercise changes your capillary beds, that's your small blood vessels, in the muscle, and actually dilates and creates more blood flow to the muscle. Narrowing of these arteries is the first problem that leads to insulin resistance. So if you're not exercising, your arteries aren't growing, and it can cause your arteries actually to tighten up and be smaller and cause insulin resistance to come on sooner. The longer one maintains an exercise program, the longer you're able to remain sensitive to your insulin. So if it becomes something of a lifestyle, you will see major changes throughout your life. So some of you, for example, have noticed that maybe during a holiday, it didn't take much for you to put on some extra weight, just because you were overeating or you were eating too much sugar. And this is something that is known as insulin resistance. Your system is extremely sensitive to the sugar, and the foods that you eat that have sugar in them will quickly turn to sugar and are the culprits for putting on those few pounds. So the sensitivity to your insulin is the key issue here. This little comic tells the story we all face. It says, what fits your schedule better, exercising 1 hour a day or being dead 24 hours a day? And isn't that the reality of it all? There are several studies that we have looked at that show that even moderate and modest exercise actually improves your insulin resistance. When this program went through the clinical study, and I'm talking about your reset program that you are doing right now at the University of Colorado Medical School, the exercise component was walking 20 to 30 minutes 5 days a week. And when those people just did that, it changed their insulin resistance or their sensitivity to foods just by walking 20 to 30 minutes a day for 5 days a week. So here are some things about well-being. And well-being is a balance of certain food types and supplements, which we have discussed last week, and we will be discussing supplements and healthy fats in the next coming weeks. But exercise and emotional well-being, or the self-talk that we tell ourselves in our thought life on a daily basis, is actually a key to our success for exercise. Dr. Cooper believes that that a perfect state of physical balance, or the state of well-being, is more important for your present and future happiness than anything he has ever written about. And the benefits of this personal well-being are listed here. You have more personal energy, you enjoy activities and leisure times better, you have greater ability to handle stress, and I can tell you that is a key factor, the ability to handle stress. Exercise does give you the ability to handle stress in your life a whole lot better. You have much better concentration at work, the greater perseverance in all daily tasks, you have more restful sleep, less depression, less hypochondria, less anxiety, fewer physical complaints, aches and pains. Your bones are stronger, and you have more efficient digestion and fewer problems with constipation. The other big issue is self-image, and people feel much more confident and feel more attractive with a streamlined body, and when they feel like they have their weight under control. And you age slower, which is a big deal. Okay, so here is our formula for well-being transformation. And it includes the PEP program, which is Positive Eating Plan. And this is one of the things that we've been working on for the last couple weeks. You want to stick with your low glycemic foods and eating habits that are designed to last for a lifetime. So that idea of eating 5 times a day in smaller amounts to keep your blood sugar stable is the key. It's not a diet. This is a new way of life that we're after, and we need to embrace it. The fundamental principle that lies behind these good eating habits is balance. So we want to make sure that all the quality foods that we eat keep that spare tire that can develop around our waist away. We want to make sure that our cholesterol stays in balance and we feel much more energized. So the second component is the aerobic exercise. And this is the idea of living in the air or utilizing oxygen, according to Dr. Cooper. It refers to those activities that require oxygen for prolonged periods of time and place demands on the body that require it to improve its capacity to handle the oxygen. As a result of aerobic exercise, there are beneficial changes that occur in your lungs, your heart, and your vascular system. An effective exercise program is a basic principle of balance. Too much of a certain type of exercise, such as running, can cause an imbalance and injuries, as well as health concerns such as vitamin deficiencies. And then the last one is emotional equilibrium. With stresses and strains of the modern life, inner peace, freedom from anxiety, emotional imbalances, and stresses need to be dealt with. So constant personal problems result in fatigue. If they're constantly happening, you feel fatigue and you lack energy. When this happens, the solution to the emotional problems may lie in solutions such as getting enough sleep or rest. Or you might need to balance your eating plan. Maybe you're not eating exactly the way you should be in the low glycemic realm. Or maybe you're not exercising at all or supplementing. So it's important to make sure that you're getting at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep a day. Too much sleep puts you at a risk for heart disease, and too much sleep can also cause sluggishness and a fuzzy head. Those who exercise in endurance activities for 30 minutes at a time discover that the principle of perseverance helps them to overcome concentration issues, and they don't have a lack of discipline. They seem more disciplined. They find that they stick to projects at work longer, and they have they feel like they do a better job when there's some ability to stay in a less stressful situation because of exercise that they've done. And I use this illustration because when I was in college, I was on the swim team. I had a scholarship, and it required me to train 30 hours a week. So I basically was in the pool for 5 hours a day, 2 hours in the morning and 3 in the afternoon. And I always found it easier to study after practice, and the stresses of my classes and the assignments were worked out in the pool. My grades were always better during swim season than they were when I wasn't training. Exercise seemed to release the stress and give my brain the ability to process and figure things out and come up with solutions. So I can attribute to the fact that exercise is very beneficial to reducing the stress in your life. So the word that changed the world back in 1968, when Kenneth Cooper coined it, was aerobics. He was exercising and thought he was having a heart attack, but it turned out that he was just out of shape. His quest to get fit changed not only his life, but also his career, and his mission became to help the world get healthy. Aerobics is a method of physical exercise for producing beneficial changes in the respiratory and circulatory systems by activities which require meeting a modest increase in oxygen intake and the ability to maintain it without getting winded. Aerobics are calculated based on the type, the intensity, the duration of the exercise. Dr. Cooper documented 41 different aerobic exercises that provide aerobic benefit, and these listed here are the top 5. So cross-country skiing would be one. That would be the one that would benefit you the most. Swimming, then running or jogging, cycling, and then walking. So what about you? Are you ready to add this key component to your healthy lifestyle? So exercise improves insulin sensitivity and helps you to maintain and stabilize your blood sugar and release fat if you're also consuming that low glycemic diet that we've been talking about. Exercise should be done 5 to 6 times per week and for at least 30 to 60 minutes at a moderate intensity level based on your fitness and athletic goals. So if you're just starting out, you're going to want to stay around the 30-minute mark. If you've been doing it and you're used to it, then you're going to want to do 5 to 6 times a week for at least 60 minutes. You want to make sure that you find something at a moderate intensity that you like and that it's fun. Because if it's not fun, it's not something that you'll stick with. Overweight people or people who haven't exercised in a long time need to start out slow. So make sure that you pick something. You could start out with a yoga class, or you could just walk in the neighborhood. Those kinds of things would be very doable. So here we have some balance of exercise. And obviously, the one exercise that promotes the most fat loss would be aerobics. However, there are several components that are extremely beneficial to your exercise regimen during the week. So we have aerobics being number 1, and that would be things like cross-country skiing, swimming, running, jogging, cycling, walking. Again, those are your top 5. These activities burn the most calories per time spent. And if you utilize something called interval training, with these exercises, you'll increase your fat burning exponentially. Well-trained athletes, for example, have low plasma levels and are very sensitive to insulin. Athletes that have have more muscle mass and have more insulin receptors on their muscles to take up the glucose or the insulin. So you want as many receptor sites on your muscles as you possibly can, because they're going to burn the fat for you. So that's why it's important to do some aerobic exercise and then add the next component, which would be weightlifting. This exercise helps to burn calories as well, especially if you're doing them in a fast repetition with little rest in between. Weights also provide toning for muscle and muscle building as you lose weight. Muscles burn more calories, so it is a key component of balance in an exercise program. Yoga would be another good option. It's great for stress reduction, balance, strength, mind-body connection, and weight loss. Holding poses and focusing on stress releasing activities and utilizing different yoga techniques can actually help you build weak areas in your body. Hot yoga is a popular practice as it releases fat, toxins, and builds strength all at the same time. One caution for hot yoga would be if you have high blood pressure, I would not start here. There's a class that you could start with that will help to lead up to that, and it's called gentle yoga or Hiawatha. Stretching would be another important thing to add to your exercise. Stretching is a key component in every exercise class, and if you've taken any kind of class, you will notice that at the end of every class, they do some form of stretching exercises. If you're not stretching after a workout, you are setting yourself up for some injury. Take it from one who knows. As an instructor, I've often let this part of my workout, when I'm personally doing things, I always do a cool down and a stretch at the end when I'm teaching. But sometimes if I go out for a run or a walk, I don't stop to do the stretching at the end. And as a result of 40 years of intensive exercise routines, I am now paying a price on some of my joints and muscles because of strains that I have had that are difficult to reverse. So please hear me. Take time and do the stretches at the end of your workout. It will save you in the long run. So here's some pictures of some of those activities if you like. The next thing that we're going to talk about is interval training, because that's a good lead into what is going to help you lose the most weight over the long haul. Interval training is something, there's a program called Peak Performance, but you can also find this at most gyms. They do a lot of interval training in different classes. I happen to teach at ACAC, and we offer quite a number of interval training options. But what it does is it promotes your natural human growth hormone production, okay? HGH has a synergetic effect on your system, and it induces a biochemical reaction that helps you to burn calories. So you want to take advantage of an interval training. HGH is not produced after long, slow exercises, only high-intensity interval peak fitness exercises with quick bursts of energy of aerobic type exercises for short periods of time is going to accomplish this. So you want to do this about 20 minutes, 3 times a week, and you will have amazing results if you do this. The American Heart Association and American Sports College of Sports Medicine have now totally changed their exercise cardio guidelines, emphasizing the benefits of this interval training. So it's something you should really truly consider taking advantage of. It also increases your strength, promotes longevity, and it takes a fraction of the time to do the interval training versus a traditional cardio class. You can do this in 20 minutes a day versus an hour a day. So it's something to think about if you don't have a lot of time. And it does promote cardiovascular fitness, and it helps to burn fat better than any exercise that I know. So here's what a interval training session can look like. And we're going to go through this so that you have a better understanding of what that will look like. So you're going to start with a 3-minute warm-up. That's going to be a key. You want to make sure that you start out warming up 3 minutes at a moderate intensity. Then you're going to exercise hard for 30 seconds. So you would come over here and you're going to exercise hard for 30 seconds. So I'm going to use the example of a treadmill. If you get on a treadmill and you walk for 3 minutes, and anybody knows anything about a treadmill on the time a lot, a good pace for a treadmill walk would be somewhere between a 3 and a 4.5. Okay, so depending on how long your legs are and how much exercise you've done in the past, you would want to start out at a pace level of a 3, anywhere between 3 and 4.5. And you're going to do that for 33 minutes. Then you're going to switch to a 30-second high intensity. So if you are a runner somewhat, you might jump up to running at a 5 pace or a 6 pace. Some people can do much faster than that, but at a 6 pace is pretty quick. You're moving about a 10-minute mile. So for some of you that are not used to that, you're going to be moving pretty quickly. You can do a 5 or 6 pace. That would be 30 seconds there. Then after you've done that, you're going to do a relaxed pace for about 90 seconds. So you're going to slow the treadmill down again back to maybe a 4.5. And you're going to walk at a 4.5 on a high or at a lower pace. You're going to repeat this high intensity interval followed by this lower intensity recovery for 7 reps, more times for about 20 to 30 minutes. It depends on how fast you're going on the treadmill, for example. So you might get 8 rounds, you might get 6 rounds. It just depends. Be mindful of your current exercise level and don't overdo it. Ultimately, you want to exercise vigorously enough so that you reach your anaerobic threshold. This is where the human growth hormone releases, and it's triggered. So make sure that you're doing that. You want to do it 2 to 3 times a week, and you will drastically see changes in this human growth hormone production and consequently in your overall fitness level if you are consistent with it. You want to monitor your heart rate and utilize the talk test as well. If you are familiar with that, the talk test is as long as you are able to talk during the exercise, you are good. If you cannot talk at all because you are so winded, you have overdone it. So you want to make sure that you can talk. To utilize the heart rate, you're also achieving the greatest benefit, and you can figure your maximum heart rate range out by taking 220, subtracting your age, and that is going to get your maximum heart rate range. Okay, so say if you take 220 and you're 50 years of age and you subtract 50, your maximum heart rate range is going to be 170. You want to put 2 fingers on your carotid artery and count 6 beats for 6 seconds. Count how many times you go through for 6 seconds, and if it gets to 170, you might not be talking at 170, or you might. We like to stay between 60 and 80% of that maximum. So if you can get between 60 and 80% of that 170, that's really the range you want to be in for your interval training. So don't overdo it. Do the talk test. So here's our exercise tips as we come to a close on the exercise piece. One of the things that I like to tell people is just make sure you have a 2-day rule when you're exercising. And what I mean by that is that you never want to go longer than 2 days without exercising. Preferably, if you're going to take your 2 days off during the week, take like maybe a Sunday and a Wednesday off. Maybe one day on the weekend and one day during the middle of the week. But never try to take more than 2 days off if you have to take 2 days off at any time. Exercise in the morning if at all possible, because it boosts your metabolism. Boosts your metabolism, and it increases your energy level and gives you a sense of accomplishment. So this is going to be a really big piece to help you throughout the day. The other big factor is that you want to vary your routine. Your body adapts to the same activity at the same level, and so you want to make sure that you're changing it up at least twice a week. So if you have a favorite thing, like if you like to walk and you like to do the brisk walk, or you like to go to the park and walk and do a walk run, do that a couple days a week, and then go to the gym and take some classes. Sometimes people like to take yoga classes. Sometimes they like to take a Zumba class. Sometimes they like to get in the pool. Just pick something that you like. You want to really enjoy it. The other thing you want to do is resistance exercise, and this is really important for muscle tone. So if you can do it at least twice a week, you want to find something that you can go to the gym, get some weights, use some of the machines. If you don't have access to a gym, or that's not something you're interested in, you can get those hand weights. And when you're walking a couple days a week, you can pump your arms up and down and out to the side with anywhere between a 1, a 3, or a 5-pound weight. And even just walking with the weights next to your body is really going to make a difference with your arms. So there's a couple ideas that you can do there if you're not one to go to the gym and lift weights. But weight training, and this is a really important thing, it really increases your metabolism and helps to burn fat. So it's something you should definitely consider. Yoga is a great class to take in the mind-body, deep breathing, access part of the fitness piece, because it actually is going to help you to release stress. So I would try to pick, maybe 1 to 2 different types of yoga classes a week if you have an option of picking something. So if we're looking at a 5-day program, what I recommend that you do is 3 days of aerobic activity, 2 days of a weightlifting activity, and 1 day of a mind-body activity such as yoga. Our stressful lifestyles need these exercises, and they need this to be regimented into our life so that we release our stress. Remember my reference to my college swimming days and the studies related to my grades. Exercise releases your endorphins and gives you the clarity in your thoughts and the ability to handle your stress more efficiently throughout your day and your week. The more you can do the exercise, the more you are going to feel great. That is it for our webinar tonight. There are some things that you have to think about, because this is a taped program today. We're not going to have time for questions and answers. But if you do have any questions related to this webinar tonight, we encourage you to put them in the forum below, and we will be answering them there. I hope you have a good week. And if you haven't signed up to get your Zyto and meet with me, please do that in the next day or so we can get you going and get you to where you need to be. Have a great evening. Good night.